11th meeting of the Community Redevelopment Agency Board called to order. I want to first of all welcome everybody for being here this morning. I didn't know what the rain was going to be like, fortunately it held off and you all could be here this morning. I haven't seen my colleagues in a while, so it's good to see it's good to see them again this morning. But again, welcome. And we're glad that you all were able to come out this morning for the meeting. Mr. Interim Executive Director, are there any agenda modifications?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman, we have not received any mods.
All righty.
I would like to point out yesterday we did send an update to the agenda materials. We added a summary of the DRC's recommendations under the presentations where we have the update materials.
Okay.
As well as we added recommendations that were followed up by the DRC report on item 8.01.
Yes,
sir.
Okay. All right. That takes us to item number 3, presentations. There's a presentation and update by the CAC chair, Mr. Eric Johnson. I didn't see Eric. Has anybody heard anything from him this morning? Okay. All right. Well, if he comes or when he comes, we will certainly give him the opportunity to make that presentation, because I know that there were some issues that came before the CAC at its last meeting that needs to be shared with the CRA board. So we'll wait to see if he shows up, and if so, we'll come back to that item. Okay, item number 4 is the portion of the agenda where we allow citizens to make comments on agenda items. Sheila, do we have any speakers that would like to address us this morning?
Good morning. Yes, Mr. Chair, we do have one speaker on an agenda item 7.01, and I have that as Mr. John O. Williams. Mr. Williams, if you would come to the podium, your name and address for the record. Okay, prior to
he's going to speak on the item? Okay, all right.
So we'll switch.
Do we have another speaker?
That's all the speakers that I have on agenda items, speaker cards on agenda items at this time.
Okay. If anyone else would like to speak and you haven't filled out a speaker form, we do have those available. And we will have additional opportunities for comments at the end of the agenda for non-agenda items. Okay, board members, that brings us to item number 5, the consent agenda. Well, actually, let me ask Mr. Interim Executive Director, were there any items pulled from the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, we had no items pulled.
Okay, so that brings us to the consent agenda. There is a motion by the mayor, seconded by Commissioner Matlow, to approve the consent agenda. Are there any questions, discussions? Hearing none. All in favor of the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. That brings us to item number 7, the proposed sale of CRA-owned properties on the 400 block of Tennessee and Virginia streets. Mr. Interim Executive Director.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman and board members, we've had a request from the Frenchtown Redevelopment Partners to basically consider the sale of properties that are owned by the CRA within the redevelopment block that they have been working on for the past several months. The CRA staff, we put out a notice according to state statutes for the potential sale of the properties, and we've had really 2 responses, both from Tony Brown Consulting Group, LLC, for the potential purchase of the property. Commissioners, if you notice that our recommended option is to direct staff to negotiate a sales and development agreement with TBCG and present to the CRA board for approval at a future meeting. Obviously, these properties are tied up into the larger discussion out there. We're allowing the developer's representative to assemble the concepts and the formal request and bring back a final sales agreement at that time when they're ready. We do have the applicant here and the agent here. I think it'd be great for him to give you a real quick update of his progress and the process moving forward.
Mr. Brown, if you would. It's good to see you this morning.
Nice seeing you too, Commissioner.
Thank you.
You have a presentation? I'm Tony Brown. I'm the principal in T. Brown Consulting Group, and I believe there is a presentation that we provided. Oh, is there? Okay. Is there a number?
And board members, if you tap your screen, it'll go to the presentation, and tap it again, it'll come back. If you're lucky.
If you're logged in.
Oh, logged in. Okay, I got you. All right.
I think Mr. McCraw going to pull up the presentation I sent. Again, it's a pleasure to be before you. I think this is perhaps my third or fourth time visiting with members of council, commission, and my first time, I believe, in total with the new body. So it's an honor to be here, and I thank you for the opportunity to present. As you know, I reported back in January of 2018, I responded to a solicitation that was put out by the Frenchtown Redevelopment Partners. It consisted at that time of 4 of the 7 property owners, and I include the CRA as being a property owner in the block that represent the 7 property owners. So the 4 property owners issued an RFP, and many of you have seen this rendering that showed a major development, and it assumed that the entire block would be scrapped and this new development would be constructed. Once selected as the proposed fee developer, I quickly found out that 2 owners in the development opted to keep their property. It was important for them to maintain their income. And so we knew then that we had to do a new site plan. And it was at that time that the CRA and the commission was gracious enough to provide the funding so that the property owners could work through their vision for a new conceptual plan. This effort had been going on for the prior 2 years before I was brought aboard. So we required a new site plan. The other thing that I quickly realized that the Frenchtown operating agreement that had existed among the 4 property owners had also terminated. It had also had an expiration date. And so the members had to negotiate a new operating agreement. And in that operating agreement, they were clear that it was not intended for them to be a joint development. They had no intentions of commingling their real estate as part of a bigger development, and that they were organized strictly for the purpose of trying to create a consensus site plan. So myself, Donald Gray, Fitzgerald Collaborative Group, Moore Bass engineers, we put together a team to work through the vision of each of the property owners. So what this slide shows you are the 5 major property owners, the CRA being the largest, followed by Bethel, West Tennessee Street Partners, Geraldine Roberts, and then Sylvester Davis. Mr. Davis's property is in red. His name is not on the board, but Mr. Davis's property is in red. So it was the Roberts family and West Tennessee Street Partners that said, look, in whatever site plan we come up with, we cannot demolish existing properties. It's income that's important to us, and so we need to see a plan that will work around it. Bethel and Mr. Davis, on the other hand, were willing development partners. The process to try to come to a consensus site plan started with each individual property owner so that we could work on the parts to create a whole. So what you see is numbered as blocks 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 you're going to see in the original plan was the attempt to create some form of owner occupancy, townhomes on the site. On that block, the property owner is the Mitchell Estate, and they're not part of Frenchtown Redevelopment Partners. And so I instructed the architect that we shouldn't show a concept if the property owner is not engaged. And so you'll see shortly in the plan, we show that as just blank property. But block number 3 is property owned by the Roberts family, and then the site 1 and 2 are CRA-owned property, and the parking design is intended so that that the shared parking can help benefit both the Roberts family and the development of the shelter site. West Tennessee Street Partners own the property in front of Block 5. In conversations with Mr. Williams, the initial thought was we would develop the retail at blocks 1 and 2. He would have the option to purchase, and if he were to purchase that option, we would come to this body and ask you to purchase Mr. Williams' property so that he could then do the takeout for blocks 1 and 2. And in the original plan, that included a linear park. Mr. Williams opted out of that scenario, and instead that he preferred to have a concept where his buildings were renovated and that we would enhance parking, traffic flow through, and more or less green space. So that left us with what can we do with the development. And so one scenario, when we look at the property owned by the Roberts family, was that they could develop their site on their own, or they could work with me or any developer or any potential tenant that they chose. What we talked about that we should cooperate at least on the architectural design, the site plan, and the enhancement of parking. So you see that concept that would allow about 14,500 square feet of retail on property owned by the Roberts family, and then the CRA, what you know as the shelter site. In talking with the community, and what attracted me to this development was the desire to do a grocery store. As you know, I've developed over 245,000 square feet of grocery-anchored development with the Kroger Company, largely in food deserts. And so when I responded to this project, I was most interested in trying to help the community secure a major grocer. So this concept would require the Roberts family to either lease the property or be part of the development. And so we are showing that we could do about a 29,000 square foot grocery store. It would meet the requirements of a Publix or an Aldi. We designed this site to reflect what a major grocer would want in terms of an urban store. The parking in this rendering, because of the topography, would be underground. It would be underneath the grocery store. It makes it an expensive development, but in conversations with grocers where we previously had it as part of a mixed-use building, grocers were not interested in being part of a mixed-use building. They primarily do that in areas where land cost is extremely high, such as New York, Chicago, places in that area. And so we believe that this concept would allow us to go back to several major grocers we talked with and convince them that to move west on Tennessee to be with all the other grocers and to come closer to Frenchtown would be an ideal location. So that explains what we attempted to do, working around the requirements of the two property owners that said they wanted to stay. And so you can see if we did the grocery store, the property that's owned by the Roberts family, the CRA shelter site, and how we would fit that into the existing development. The parcel that Bethel owns, and they are a major developer, and like to thank Reverend Holmes, who allowed us to look at a variety of concepts, including rebuilding the Bethel Tower and other things. But what we settled on, based on community feedback, is a focus on workforce housing. There's still some discussion as to whether or not it should be an increase of senior housing, but clearly we know we want it to be workforce housing, and we've designed 174 units, which would be a mix of 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom units. And so this is my last slide, and I'll be available for questions. So we did two offer letters, not knowing the degree of competition. The first one for $215,000 represents Site 1 on this map, and you can see that Bethel owns that property. And what that would allow us to do is the development that you see there. It would allow us to do the workforce housing on the property in combination of Bethel and CRA site, and we would blend the real estate in order to do that. In our second offer letter, proposed to form a development company with Sylvester Davis. He and I would eventually close on the CRA site, represented as number 2, and our offer there is $923,000. This offer price has been justified by an appraisal. We know that your policy requires at least 2 appraisals. So in our offer, we're asking if you after your staff review the appraisal by Johnson Curitin, that you would then order your own appraisal, and we propose to purchase the property based on the average of 2 appraisals. We didn't come to you with any other requests because we know what we have to do is roll up our sleeve and look at the site and continue our evaluation of the site, existing utilities, whether or not they need to be upgraded, and to talk to potential tenants. But what we shared when we were talking with staff in order to comply with the grant, it required us to get community input. And as we were getting community input, we were reminded by Mr. McCraw that Frenchtown nor any of its property owners had site control. And so that put us in a very precarious position because as we were talking to members of the community and we're getting their ideas about this plan, it was important for us to be credible. And to not have site control could mean that we were presenting a plan that was not credible. And so it was at the advice of the assistant city manager that he thought that we will then put the release out, the notice of disposition, and following your policy. And so we responded. And because Frenchtown Redevelopment Partners is not a development company, it was decided that each individual member could respond on their own, and we shared the appraisals in case they wanted to do such. And in this case, I was able to articulate a development opportunity with Bethel and Mr. Davis and potentially the Roberts family. So that's the presentation. I hope I didn't take too much time, but I think that walks you through our process.
Yeah, I think it was important that especially for the new board, that we have that kind of comprehensive presentation, members. Are there any questions? Mr. Mayor?
2 questions. By the way, thank you for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you, sir.
First of all, tell me about the feedback that we're receiving from the neighborhood.
Well, the feedback we got from the neighborhood is that there was overwhelming support for a grocery store. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of conversation about the type of housing. Clearly, no one wanted any more student housing. Right. That was adamant. There is strong support for additional senior housing, and there is support for workforce housing. So we heard that. Now, the issue might be the density. We're showing in this rendering maybe about 7 stories. But what makes the development costly is parking. And so we need to do the balance of how many units that can pay for parking, because thanks to the city, we did do a parking study, which indicated we could not justify to you to make an investment in that area for a public parking garage. So this development would have to stand on its own. And as staff knows, we have since lowered the degree of density. But I think overall, the community was generally supportive. They focused on the type of housing, obviously neighborhood-related retail, and making sure that we stuck to the history of Frenchtown, and that we developed this block with a vision towards what Frenchtown has been and what it could be in the future.
Excellent. Second question, I'm very excited about the potential for an urban grocery store. I think that's fantastic. You've been talking in concept, though, at this point. Have you had direct communications with any of the stores? Not going into too much detail.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have.
Great.
And I've had significant conversations with several major grocers. As staff know, I completed the food desert study for the city of Jacksonville, and I shared that report. As you know, Winn-Dixie, as you may not know, was headquartered in Jacksonville, and they filed bankruptcy. So the African-American community was significantly impacted. And as I shared, I've developed grocery stores with Kroger, so I know their economics. And I would say to you, it's not going to be an easy undertaking.
Right.
But we will do our best.
Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Matlow?
Well, first, thank you for the presentation, and I kind of want to echo what the mayor was talking about. I think the grocery store aspect would be critical for the development. I think it's something we really need to bring to that neighborhood. So as you're having those conversations, if there's any type of assistance or any way we can help further that conversation, just please let us know.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Williams.
I also want to say thank you for this very thorough presentation. I've had an opportunity to watch this grow through the years before coming to the commission, and I'm glad to see it continue to go in a positive direction in being able to leverage workforce in senior housing as a possibility. I think that's a good mix to do some intergenerational opportunities and to keep the flavor and character of Frenchtown. I'm glad that that was a factor to be considered. So thank you for providing this level of detail for us, and looking forward to seeing where and how we will continue to grow.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Tony, very much. And, oh, Commissioner Bryan, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand.
Hard being on this end.
I used to be down there once, so I know what you mean.
So you should know to look down here.
I really want to echo the sentiments of my fellow commissioners and the mayor. I think this is an awesome opportunity for Frenchtown, and it's been in the mix for quite a long time. So I'm looking forward to moving forward with this project and really others that will support the growth and development in the Frenchtown area. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm of course, I've been on board with this from day one, and I'm just real excited. And I can tell you guys, I don't know that there's anyone else that would have been more suited to help lead this than Tony Brown. He is a phenomenal individual, impeccable credentials and background, and has just done a phenomenal job. And we all are looking forward to it because all of us know what Frenchtown was and can be to this community. And we're looking forward to bringing at least some vestiges of that back.
Thank you.
And that area being a part of this all-America city. And so we look forward to working with you as we continue to go along.
Thank you.
Okay. I understand, Mr. Director, that we have some additional speakers on this item, so we'll take those speakers at this point.
Yes, at this time, we have two speakers on this item, Mr. John O. Williams, followed behind Mrs. Alexis McMillan. Mr. Williams, if you would, name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Williams. Welcome.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm John Williams. My office address here in Tallahassee is 211 East Virginia Street. I am general partner with the J.O. Williams Corp. is. But either way, I'm the representative of the West Tennessee Street Partners. We've had property there at 458 West Tennessee Street for 30 years. I've come today to encourage you to vote no on any conceptual plans or offers to purchase CRA property on Tennessee or Virginia Street at this time. The rationale is I think there's more work to be done. I think the CRA properties on Tennessee Street and Virginia Street can be part of a gateway to a vibrant Frenchtown or a barrier. Although there has been a lot of work done, there's more to do to optimize that a gateway is created and not a barrier. The CRA adjacent and surrounding properties, which are the subject of your discussion and potential action today, present a unique opportunity to preserve, promote, and revitalize Frenchtown within the context of historic preservation. These important properties should be looked at within the context of the development of Frenchtown and not just one block to maximize development of one block. Our idea was to create a sense of place with economic development and connect Frenchtown to the flow of commerce in Tallahassee. Frenchtown, as people have already commented, was once an area with a downtown feel which included many small businesses. That can happen again within the context of historic preservation with more work and particularly more community input. I voted no on the conceptual plans I've seen so far and encourage you to vote no on selling the CRA properties as proposed to you this morning. The plans as I see them either create a barrier than a gateway or are focused on smaller rather than the larger picture to be truly successful. In any event, I think it needs more work. One of the things that I've talked about from day one is that this block, if we just put something up there, it can be a barrier to the rest of Frenchtown to develop, and Frenchtown is more of a whole. there are valuable inputs that have not been included. One yet untapped resource is the Main Street program within the Division of Historical Resources in the Florida Department of State. They are interested in Frenchtown. This is part of a national program that has an impressive track record. It doesn't cost the city anything for them to come in and assess our assets and help us organize a little bit. The other thing, I know there's been community input, but I don't think there's been a lot. Sometimes it takes a while. I think the community is just realizing that they can have more of what they want there. And what I'm asking this body to do is allow that to come forth so that you have more a true community input from everyone and not just some people. So I realize we want to go forward, but we don't want to go forward so fast that we leave people out that should have been included. I'm not even sure whether the Frenchtown placemaking plan has been consulted. Anyway, I don't think these plans promote the highest and best use at this point. There's nothing wrong with the grocery store. The concern is viability. But anything to do with social programs on this block.
Mr. Williams,
I'm
if
sorry,
you would
Rep. Tanner?
start to conclude your comments,
Yes.
please.
Yeah, if you want to finish your thought.
Yeah, but my concern isn't that we do social programs, but it seems that you don't want to do social programs on a main economic corridor. That was my concern.
Social program.
And my last thing, and I always get in trouble for this, I think if we're going to have true connectivity, we need to discuss having a bridge over Tennessee Street in Macomb. Sounds far-fetched, but I don't think it is. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Our next speaker.
Ms. McMillan, please name and address for the record, 3 minutes.
Good morning. Alexis Roberts McMillan, 6717 Tim Tam Trail, Tallahassee. The Roberts family has been in the Frenchtown community since 1951. We joined the Frenchtown Redevelopment Partners with the mindset of supporting the partners in our desire to help the community more. We want businesses to thrive again in Frenchtown. We want people to live and thrive again in Frenchtown. The residents, landowners of family property, and all businesses now in the area may not have voiced their thoughts yet. They should be encouraged to lift every voice and say what is wanted. The Roberts family wants to be able to preserve the historic footprint that Tallahassee is proud of. We wish to be a good neighbor, as we hope we are now, and into the years to come. We want the proposed businesses. Tallahassee has buildings that are empty, just blocks away. Can that be a good idea? We know that there is the desire to build in the area, and we support building for sustained occupation. We support local businesses, and we hope the Tallahasseans will see the need to do the same, even more than we do now. We cannot go back in time, and we realize this, but just as other communities invite and encourage growth, we want the same.
Okay. Thank you, Alexis. Any other speakers?
That is all the speakers that I have as it relates to agenda item number 7.01.
Okay. Members, is there Commissioner Williams-Cox?
I move the acceptance of the recommendation.
Okay, there's a motion by Commissioner Williams-Cox, seconded by the mayor. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. The motion carries unanimously on item 7.01. Okay, I saw Eric come in. So, Eric, are you prepared for your presentation? That'll take us back to item number 3.01. Good morning.
Good morning. Pardon me, I jotted the time down wrong today.
Okay.
I think it was 10 o'clock. I only have 3 items that I want to make mention of,
Okay.
primarily related to the CAC bylaws.
Okay.
Section 3, membership as reference to vacancies. Currently, the CAC chair is not included in the notification loop as it relates to vacancies. On May 22, 2019, CAC chair requested to be included in the notification process for filling a vacancy on the CAC. We received a response back from ACM Tedder pledging to get answers to provide clarity. The language in the proposed updated GFS CRA CAC bylaws have not provided clarity, but are even more obscure. Who on the CAC will notify the CRA of any vacancy? How can the CAC chair keep informed without being included on communications or notifications relative to vacancies? The CAC chair will not have vital information to ensure that the CAC complies with these bylaws according to Article 5, Section A. Also related to the bylaws, under the committee operations, the CAC is a committee of the CRA board. The language of the proposed updated bylaws bylaws imply that staff derives the agenda for CAC meetings, and actually this seems to be the practice during my time on the CAC. Whether a committee given the CRA board should clarify its expectations of this CAC, whether it's a committee given to review of staff filtered items or one given to feedback from citizens and residents of the GFS district. Also, I want to make mention of the updates to the GFS redevelopment plan. We're in agreement with updating the CRA redevelopment plan. However, the pace at which we are moving is concerning. We understand and appreciate the sense of urgency of the CRA board and staff. We also appreciate the challenges staff are faced with in allocating time and resources in fulfilling directives from the CRA board and requests from the CAC and DRC. It seems we are hurriedly moving to complete updating the plan without any consideration for the current plan. I really think a case could be made that the plan has been in continual updating through this CRA board and the CAC DRC meetings. It is obvious much has been done in the district, and it is equally obvious much has not. Wouldn't it be prudent to assess the current plan's successes and shortcomings before we add more to the to-do list? Some suggest we shouldn't dwell on the past, and I agree. Yet without an understanding of what was driving us away from fulfilling the current plan, how do we know what to change? Furthermore, we end up delaying action for those items and the people in the plan that have waited the longest and needed the most. In any event, we have spoken with staff about an analysis of the current plan, which we expect soon. However, we have also requested the draft plan updates before the community meetings, but to my knowledge, we have not received them yet. We ask that the board direct staff to forward the draft plan updates to the CAC. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Eric. Mr. Tedder, could you respond to
Sure, absolutely.
some of those issues at this point?
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question before you respond?
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning.
I want to make sure that what you just shared with us is the sentiment of the entire Citizens Advisory Council. Are these your observations as chairman?
These are my observations as chairman. As far as a motion or directive from the CRA committee, CAC committee, no.
Okay, because see, my concern with that is that as chair, you should be bringing the message from the body, not your personal items.
Correct. And that's what we are trying to do. And that's why we're asking this board to clarify what they expect from the CAC. Because as it is, we have not been able to get to that because we have not been able to drive the agenda.
So having said that, before we spend any more time dealing with your personal comments or personal questions, I think it's prudent that we find out what the Citizen Advisory Council, Citizen Advisory Committee, what it is that the body needs. Because if we spend time providing you what you're personally asking for, we may still have to do it for the Citizen Advisory Committee. And I've attended those meetings prior to being elected, and I have some serious concerns about the operation of the CAC, abiding by the bylaws, number one. Number two, the decorum that happens during the meetings and in that room. So, but that's me personally, because I've been there. So if I spent staff time dealing with my personal issues, then they don't have time to deal with the issues of the body. So my point in saying all of this is we want to spend time making sure, like we do with other citizen advisory committees, we deal with the issues of the body, not issues of the chair, unless the chair is relaying information from the body. So that's why I wanted to make that clarification. Are these your items, or is this these the items of the Citizen Advisory Council?
I would say they relate directly to, they're not my personal items because I'm just here as a vessel. In order to do the CAC chair position, we need clarity as to what the position is supposed to do. And so there needs to be some type of communication as to who's on the council, who's on the committee, and when they come on and when they go off. If the chair is to function as a real, genuine position, then that's difficult to do without personality. It's difficult to do if you don't know.
Right, I understand.
So it's not personality. It's an issue based on what we're reading in the bylaws and what's being proposed.
So if we look at the minutes from your last meeting, these items that you just shared with us, are they documented in those minutes from the body?
No, we did not spend as much time on the bylaws as we should have at that meeting. The meeting was very packed with other items, and so we didn't have opportunity to scrutinize the bylaws as we have since.
Mr. Chair, I, in light of what I'm hearing, I have great unreadiness to respond to this.
Yes.
I think that we need to have a workshop or something with the Citizen Advisory Committee in whole to answer all of these questions so that everyone on the committee is informed and aware of their function and what it is that they're supposed to be doing and how people come on and off the board. Having served on Citizens Advisory Boards before, we know that it is not the chair who determines who comes and goes. It is spelled out in our documents who come and go, and when they come and go, and the chair is advised when it's time to do it. But I think that we need to do some real work with the Citizen Advisory Committee.
Commissioner Williams-Cox, I think your observations are spot on, as they say. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It was my assumption that those recommendations were coming from action taken by the CAC, and you know what they say about assumptions. But I agree that that maybe that kind of workshop, if it's the will of the board, that kind of workshop does need to occur. And I have not attended the meetings, but I have heard of, especially those decorum issues that you speak to, and the inability of the CAC to get first of all, to get a quorum to conduct business, but even when there is a quorum, because of the lack of decorum, to be able to conduct your business. And so I would agree with that Mr. Interim Executive Director, that be something that we take a look at, again, if it's the wish of the board. Mr. Mayor, and then Commissioner Bryant.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you coming, and I do appreciate your service. I am dedicating too much of my time in the office of the mayor listening to the concerns and the problems that we are having on the CAC. We have got to straighten this out. I will be very clear on my expectations of the chair and of the board. You are a citizens advisory committee, much like other citizens advisory committees that we have. The role of the Citizen Advisory Committee is to also dig in and to assist this governing body who makes the binding decisions on behalf of this community, as we are duly elected to do so, with these decisions. I find it a little nerve-wracking that as the chair, you are not familiar with the membership of your board and their terms. I would encourage Wayne to please provide the chair and myself a copy of all the members, their terms, and when new appointments will be coming up. When we talk about communications of appointments, quite frankly, I expect you to know before we know who is rolling off your board and when new appointments need to come up, especially if somebody rolls off midterm. We're not necessarily going to know that in real time like you will. The role of the CAC is to guide this board and help us make legal binding decisions. We operate under a council management form of government where we hire professional staff that run the day-to-day operations, set the agendas, and help the Citizens Advisory Board, much like the CRA, in making those decisions. When it comes to the governance of your board, you need to depend on the professional staff to set the agenda that represents the issues facing this board, so that together as a community, we can move forward to make the decisions. I am getting frustrated hearing about what's going on at the CAC as well. I am looking forward to a new day where we can all, as a community, move forward in real progress, because I know that my colleagues and I are truly dedicated and have done tremendous work turning the CRA around to make more progress. And so we are here to work. We are here to work with the CAC, but we got to get our act together. I hope I am clear. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Chair. You're mayor today on this board.
Hey, no, he's your honor. He's your honor today. Your honor.
I was about to say, you're welcome, Your Honor.
There you go. There you go.
Commissioner Matlow. I'm sorry, Commissioner
I
Bryant.
think he wanted to speak.
Did you want to respond?
Yes.
Eric, okay.
I agree. There has been some confusion. All we ask for is a process. We're not here pushing one way or the other. We will work with whatever the process that this board and staff has. But it has not been clear up until this point. We're not into pointing fingers or finding fault. We just are raising an issue, and we need a response back.
Let me be clear. The process is this board is dealing with issues where we will be making legally binding decisions on behalf of the community. Before we make those decisions, professional staff will take those issues, as we do with our other citizens advisory committees, and ask for you to study, to also gain community input, and to provide an advisory opinion to this board for final decision. Your job is to take the issues that we will be making those final decisions, work with the community, study the issues, and provide an advisory opinion. Am I being clear?
Yes, but I
Excellent.
actually was addressing the vacancy issue and notification.
The vacancies will be appointed by this board together collectively as staff lets us know that either someone is termed out or there is a new vacancy because someone has rolled off. Of course, we take suggestions from everybody in the community.
Yes.
And especially those that are interested in serving. We encourage everybody to fill out an application. The final appointment will be done by this board, though. Yeah. Am I clear?
And we understand that.
Excellent.
The problem was we did not have vacancy information. We did not have information related to when people resign. That was not my understanding, and based on what you're saying now, that was not our responsibility to track that. That should be coming from staff. Is that correct?
When a vacancy occurs, officially, it is made known to the CRA and to the board. As soon as the executive director knows that there is a vacancy, he notifies this board and probably you and your board when that vacancy comes up.
And
I
this
am
is the
suggesting,
Excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, I am suggesting that you and your board probably knows when one of those vacancies, because you serve with those individuals, will come up before we will, or maybe even the executive director. But when those vacancies come up, we will all be notified, and this board will make a decision to fill that vacancy.
And the point that I'm trying to drive at here today is we are not notified.
Okay, let me do this.
We were not notified.
We talked,
Can I finish?
Eric, we talked about doing a workshop, and I think a lot of what is being discussed are topics that should be discussed in that workshop rather than here at our business meeting this morning. So what I'm going to suggest is Mr. Interim Executive Director, is that we schedule a workshop. Staff schedule a workshop with the CAC, the leadership of the CAC, and the full membership to address these issues so that the CAC is clear on what staff's role is, the CAC's role, the role of the chair, and also our role as a CRA board. And I think that that should be scheduled as soon as possible, certainly before our next meeting as a CRA.
That's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
Thank you. And as I was saying, we were not notified of a resignation. We were not notified.
Okay, but Eric, that's
Can I
what
finish?
we're gonna
I understand what
address
you're saying, but can I
in our
finish my
workshop.
statement? Because we're not looking to appoint people. We understand that. All we're asking is for notification. We are limited in our communications with one another. So we are heavily reliant upon staff to notify us. And if we're not notified, it's impossible for us to do the piece that Mr. Mayor is saying of we would know before you all. We don't, unless someone tells us.
Okay, and in that workshop, all of this will be clarified, so that all of us are working from the same sheet of music.
We did receive a member spreadsheet from staff about a month ago. We do acknowledge that, and we appreciate that. However, we have maybe possibly two pending members. We don't know whether they are on the board or not.
Right, okay. But Eric, I think the issues are larger than that, as what you've heard, than appointments. And so I think what we've outlined here is a process for addressing that. And if there are questions and concerns beyond what you all receive in the workshop, then certainly you can come back to the board at our next meeting and present those issues. But I think everything would be addressed in that workshop.
Well, thank you.
Okay. And thank you again for your service. We do appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Bryant, did you forget your thought?
Oh, no, no.
Oh, okay. All right.
My thought has just been solidified in that if we go ahead and have the workshop, as you have suggested, we should be at a better place, because the bottom line is, from where I sit, is the committee has a very definite, positive role with where we go in providing services in the community. And we cannot be stymied by whether it's a lack of planning, lack of understanding, when we have control over those issues. So I'm just in total support of us moving forward with the workshop.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Matlow?
I just I think the workshop will bring clarity to it, but I'm not familiar with the history. But I'm just curious. You mentioned, I know we've had a problem getting a quorum, and we've had vacancies. Have we had long-standing vacancies? Do we have a process if people aren't showing up for removal? Have we looked at, I mean, at the end of the day, we should be appointing those members. So we should be appointing people who are going to show up, and that's
Right.
they. So
Right
I mean, that falls on us. It falls on this board to make sure that's happening properly. So if you could just apply us with an update of vacancies, how long we've had vacancies, if there's a failure of us to get people on that board timely, and then I think the workshop will kind of flesh out some of those thoughts.
Right. Your point is very well taken.
And Mr. Mayor, if
Williams,
Mr. Mayor,
Mayor
Chair,
Richardson. Mayor
no, we're ready for break, I think. To speak to Commissioner Matlow's concern, it is spelled out very well, the categories that the members, the membership of the CAC, where they fit. So it's spelled out. What may or may not be clear is the beginning and ending term. So that will help bring clarity. But it's spelled out sliced very nicely as to who fits into what slot, to make sure we have that kind of coverage. I know this because I've gone to talgov.com and looked at it.
Yeah.
So it's there.
Okay. All right. Wayne, are you
Yes, sir.
okay with the direction that
Yes,
we've
sir.
given there? Okay.
We'll look between now and September, I think 26th is your next meeting.
Right. Okay. All right. Eric, thank you so much. We do appreciate your service. You're welcome. Okay. All right. That brings us then to item 7.02. Mr. Executive Director.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman and board members, we had a request. Underground Utilities and Public Infrastructure is working on the final designs for the linear park that will tie in from the Speed Spencer Stevens Park to the St. Mark's Trail. They're getting close enough they're expecting construction to begin in August, but they've realized that they may be short on funding to complete the construction, so they've asked for an additional $150,000 to complete the project so they can move forward in August.
Okay. And we have that in the budget?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Move staff.
That's a- Oh, do we have any public comment? Any speakers? Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a motion by Commissioner Bryant, seconded by the mayor. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. The motion carries unanimously. Item 7.03.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, board members, we had a request from DJV, who currently leases 25 parking spaces in the block and the deck development. They are utilizing an agreement that has terms of expiration that moves. Rick actually will have to give the details on that, but it's for a long period of time. They've come in and they've asked for an additional 20 parking spaces, and Rick will give you a very brief presentation on this matter.
Commissioners, so this is a request from District Joint Venture, as Wayne pointed out, who already leases 25 spaces in the the deck development, which is the largest of the developments on Gaines Street. It's the one near at the intersection of Gaines and Gay Street on the south side of Gaines Street. We have an agreement with them to lease the spaces. We also have in the development agreement, we allow up to 60 spaces of the garage, 60 of the CRA-owned public parking spaces in the garage to be leased. They've asked to lease an additional 10 spaces in the deck and 10 spaces in the block. This is designed to accommodate some of their parking needs for retail spaces. They've got about 6 spaces that have not been leased since the property came on board in 2014. One of their challenges has been the ability to provide parking for tenants of those retail spaces, tenants and employees of those retail spaces. The slide up there showing right now shows 5 of those parking spaces in the deck. They were negotiating agreements with 5 of those 6 spaces, and they're hopeful that if they get the additional parking spaces, they'll be able to close those leases. If the proposed agreement would be consistent with the agreement we have in place right now, which has 5 years. The original 5 years will end in January of January 2020, and there'll be 2 more 5-year extensions, taking out an additional 10 years. Each time they have a extension of the lease, the lease rate goes up by 5%. So right now it's $50 per space. It'll go to $55 per space in January. The College Town folks, they lease their spaces for $60 a space, but they also have a lot more retail over in that corner, and they're a lot more active. So we're hoping this can be an incentive to bring and finish out those retail spaces that have been vacant from the beginning on the block and deck developments. And I'm prepared to answer any questions you all might have.
Any questions for Rick? Commissioner Williams-Cox?
So tell me again why College Town is paying 60 and we're offering 50, or we're being asked to do 50 for this one.
I think our goal here is to kind of get the spaces leased, whereas College Town is a very much more developed retail market with a lot of students and others right in the area, so they can get a little bit more. Their garage is larger. Their garage is also meant to accommodate for a hotel in the future. Mm-hmm. At this space here, we have 5-6 units that have not been leased since 2014. We'd like to get those spaces, those retail spaces leased, so we can start creating more activity on that part of Gaines Street. And that we think this is an incentive to bring those retailers in and bring activity on the front of Gaines Street.
Have we gotten any pushback from College Town folks?
No. We couldn't lease in theirs anyhow because they're dedicated strictly for the College Town. The garage is for residents of College Town as well as the retail merchants of College Town.
Okay. Board members, if I could add, so Rick was following an existing agreement. If it's your desire that we not tie these to the existing agreement and develop a new agreement, we can do that as well.
Mr. Matlow?
Thank you, and I like that direction, Wayne. I think we want to make sure we're getting the best value for our parking spaces. We spent a lot of money up front to help build the parking garage with the expectation that we were going to get a return on our investment. And unfortunately, with the vacant spots, people aren't parking there. We're not getting the hourly parking. But I do know when we look at just the greater city of kind of the market rate of a parking grade spot, we're landing between $90 and $105. I'm not suggesting we try to charge them that much. I'd like to see that development be successful. But I'd like to offer 2 alternatives. One, directly across the street, the city of Tallahassee owns a surface lot that I think we could reserve spots in for that rate of $50, $55 because it's undeveloped and it's cheaper for us to have. But for the prime parking spots we have in the garage, I think they demand a slightly higher rate. I don't want to set what it is, but I'd like to give staff the opportunity to go back and renegotiate a higher rate, more towards what we feel is market value. Because I think those dollars, why they're not many, they could go through towards events in Frenchtown or any other sorts of things we want to do in the future.
Okay, let's make that as a motion, Commissioner Matlow, so it's an official action by the board, if you're okay with that?
Yeah, so moved.
Okay. There's a motion by Commissioner Matlow. You understand the nature of the motion?
Absolutely
Wayne?
do.
Okay. Seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Commissioner Matlow. We appreciate that. Okay, so that brings us to item number 8, 8.01, the request for $50,000 downtown improvement grant,
Yes, sir.
facade improvement grant.
Mr. Chairman, board members, there is a request for $50,000 in a downtown ground floor retail and entertainment facade program. This program has not been discontinued, but there has not been funding that has been set aside for, I believe, the last 2 years. The DRC reviewed this application about 2 days ago, and I probably just need to have Sheila kind of go over this application and the DRC's recommendation to you.
Good morning.
Good
Name and address for the record, please.
Good morning.
You only
Sheila
have 3 minutes,
Williams,
Sheila.
300 South Adams Street. Good morning, CRA Chair Richardson and CRA board members. Thank you for this opportunity. I present to you agenda item number 801, which is a request for $50,000 downtown district ground floor retail and entertainment facade grant for the property located at 107 West College Avenue. There's a slide up that shows the existing conditions of that site from the northern portion of College Avenue. MSMM Holdings, LLC, which is actually Michael Steiner and Matt Mahaffey as managing partners, submitted an application to us. I'd like to just step back for a very quick moment and provide a framework of the program. The Downtown GREF program is a hybrid program of the previous downtown commercial facade and downtown commercial painting programs, which allowed an applicant to apply for up to a $50,000 matching grant for exterior improvements with no more than $5,000 going towards commercial painting. Encouraged by the success of a modified program through the Greater Frenchtown Southside District, which is the BFIP, the Downtown GREF program was formulated and subsequently approved by the CRA Board March 2017. Based on the changing character and needs of the downtown district, and in order to foster a vibrant and robust downtown, the program does require a retail or commercial or entertainment use for the first floor of any structure when you're requesting funding under this program. So now I'll go ahead and explain the request that we received with that background framework. Melissa, could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So the subject property is located there at 107 West College Avenue. The CRA request for funding is for exterior improvements only for eligible work items that will include demolition of the existing facade items, foundation repairs, replacement of the facade to include steel, masonry, and stucco improvements, the installation of a storefront, awnings, new doors, windows, and facade painting. The applicant does anticipate doing, in addition to the exterior improvements, some interior improvements to the building as well. The structure he's going to currently build out a second story, and there are some proposed renderings for what the proposed improvements will include. We do require under the program that applicants submit 3 bids to us, and the lowest bid that we received as it relates to the improvements, inclusive of everything and just the exterior and interior, total upwards of $1.3 million. The low bid for the exterior improvements was right at $306,000 plus or minus. So the request is for a CRA funding request amount of $50,000 as a dollar-for-dollar match. There were some minor in your packet, agenda packet. We did outline the staff summary and application report along with your agenda item, and there are two minor grant issues, 2 or 3 minor grant issues that we do know that can subsequently be taken care of before, if you do a positive disposition on this request, we can work with the applicant within 30 days to cure the minor issues that were outlined in your agenda packet. And those items were 2 minor code enforcement issues. One is as it relates to broken glass of the structure, and there's been some issue with the alleyway, and there are some back taxes that are due. Typically, we do require that there are no code enforcement issues and that taxes are paid. But the applicant is currently going through doing a new construction loan, and we anticipate that should happen within the next week or 2, and those items can be addressed or cured during that process, and clearly the code violations will be taken care of as the applicant does the construction for the site and before being granted any certificate of completions or occupancies for the structure. So staff has outlined that in the report. Your meeting is today, which is July 11th. We did have the DRC meeting on Tuesday, this past Tuesday, July the 9th, and the DRC did recommend approval of this request, but in your report, we did outline some of the issues that the DRC had. It was presented to them, like I said, at their July 9th meeting. They did have general discussion regarding the limitations of the program. The DRC comments did focus on requiring the commercial retail use on the first floor and its viability. They had concerns understanding how the commercial and retail uses are defined, and they wanted to ensure that subsequently we could specifically quantify the minimum square footage required to meet the thresholds for retail and commercial uses on the first floor. So what they asked staff to do is subsequently, in some prior upcoming meetings, provide them with the GREF information, the guidelines and application, so that they can kind of take a look at that, see if we need to add some specificity to it or making any recommendations to your board to shore up that program, modify it or maintain it. But they were okay with doing the approval for this request under the program, Downtown GREF, which requires ground floor retail entertainment use on the first story, and then subsequently coming back and looking at the program and bringing anything back, any changes that they hope they wanted or hoped for you all to make a determination on. So with that, staff does recommend approval of the GREF application for 107 West College Avenue as outlined in the agenda item, to include the requirement that the applicant obtains an alleyway user agreement with adjacent owners, because that has been an issue over the past couple of years, who can use the alley, and that will resolve any long-standing solid waste and upkeep issues. So we are requesting that you approve the request under option number 1. And I did see Mr. Mike Steiner, who is one of the managing partners. I didn't know if you wanted to say anything, Mr. Steiner. Name and address for the record, 3 minutes.
Good morning, Mike. Thank you for being here this morning.
Good morning, Commissioners and Mr. Mayor. Mike Steiner, 107 West College Avenue. I appreciate the opportunity to present this to you guys. I want to start, I've got a long time and proven track record for the development and redevelopment of the College Avenue corridor. It started back actually in my college days in the early 2000s. One of the more notable projects I was involved in was the Onyx at the corner of Macomb and College, and seems to be a success and has been very instrumental in cleaning up that area. Naturally, I've been kind of attracted to this area for a long time, and identified this building located at 107 West College as something that I saw as blight for the downtown area in many ways. The building's been vacant for a long time. I think the last time there was a tenant in there was I guess the early 2000s when I was in college, when Gordo's was in there. There's some negative connotations associated with the building as well. That's something that we looked to put in the past. And there's also some positive in the mural on the front of the building, the postcard mural on the front of the building. That's a major attraction, much more than I realized prior to buying the building, is people love to stop and take pictures there. Our intent with that mural would be to try and preserve it. We're not sure how we're going to do that. I know that when we address the demolition of the building, of the facade, I should say, and the interior, which is mostly demolished to begin with, we're going to do our best to preserve that. I've been working in conjunction with Elizabeth over here with the DIA on trying to find a home for that. So we do not know. We don't have answers, but I do know that once it goes, it will be preserved to the best of our ability. Maybe easier said than done because it's pieced together with a bunch of T111 board and that sort of thing. But anyways, so that's my history here. I did, there are some fundamental issues with that section of the block. I was involved in the sale of the properties to both Capital City Consultants, which is going vertical on their building, as well as Florida Power and Light, which was recently completed. So to say I have a vested interest in this property is probably an understatement. And so once I consummated those transactions, I thought it would be, the next best step was to take down this building. Fortunately, I bought it at a price that I found to be attractive. Unfortunately, at the time, we were going to move forward with construction immediately. It's since been 2 years. We've become a victim to the construction cost and labor shortage. So long story short, the trash is something that I had a major problem with. It's something that I've tried to address since day one. I actually own about 95% of that alleyway. It's used by several retail and businesses downtown. And there's been a lot of finger pointing going on. I threw up my hands at one point because I didn't have a project and we weren't moving forward. I was just going to let things move on as usual. That is not my intent right now. I am hell-bent, for lack of better terms, on seeing this alleyway cleaned up. I think it's a public health hazard and it quite frankly is a cesspool at times. And it will not happen under my watch with a building and tenants in it. Ideally, I get retail tenants in there, but that's a whole other story. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions for Mike? Commissioner Williams-Cox, and then the mayor.
Well, and I don't know who this question goes to, but the tax liability, how much are we talking about? And normally, I think normally when someone owes some, tax dollars, we kind of want that taken care of before moving forward with.
Sure. In all honesty, it's a business decision. And so, we have the right to defer those taxes. They go to a tax sale and someone else benefits from it by paying, generating interest on that income. Mm-hmm. We've elected to do so given that this was a non-performing cash flowing property. And we had considerable expenses in principal and interest payments over the last 2 years. At the close of this construction loan, which is scheduled of Monday of next week, the property tax delinquencies will be addressed immediately, and naturally, well, that's all you're asking about, so I'll leave it at that. But those will be paid at closing. They've been approved by the lender and the attorneys involved.
The dollar figure is approximately $3,600 plus or minus.
Okay. Is that it, Commissioner Williams-Cox? Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Steiner, it's good to see you. First of all, I want to say thank you for investing in downtown Tallahassee.
Yes.
We certainly do appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Very familiar with this piece of property. It is encouraging to hear that you want to preserve the mural and work with the downtown partners as well. Colleagues, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that I am friends with Mr. Steiner, and his boys are some of the best wide receivers in Tallahassee Parks and Recreation flag football. Kids can run, I can tell you. All kidding aside, business is business. I was going to play hardball with you. I am glad to hear that we have an agreement on the alley. That has been a sore subject, and I know that that has been something that a lot of people have been involved in. I'm glad to hear you say that we're going to be able to work together, and under this grant, that we're going to be able to move forward. I just want to make sure that we're crystal clear. We do have an agreement on the alley moving forward that will.
So the recommendation is to include obtaining that agreement, and thanks to Elizabeth for stepping in and trying to broker that. So that would be part of the approval contingency.
And we're good with that, right, Mike?
Yes, sir. And as you know, Mr. Mayor, there's been there's a 2-year history of my persistence, well, at least for the first 18 months, to address this issue.
Correct. And I do appreciate that.
There was a lot of finger pointing going on, and there
understand.
still is between these users. I reached a point where I found it counterproductive to address some of these things because there wasn't any action on my end. So I kind of allowed things to continue with business as usual.
I understand.
Meanwhile, documenting some of these every time I walk by them. But there are documented emails between yourself, Mr. Tedder, Solid Waste that date back to December of 2016. Yes. And it is something that if you want to get my blood boiling, get me talking about that alleyway and the trash issue back there, because it will.
Myself too.
Yeah, there will be steam coming out of my ears. It is something that I'm passionate about. It's something that I feel very strongly about that needs to be improved and needs to be corrected. Thankful for Elizabeth back here. She has been pretty effective in getting all parties together. We do have some plans, namely the number one requirement. What's that?
If you would sort of
We're
start
good.
wrapping up your
I
thoughts.
just wanted to hear that we do have
a
an
use
agreement.
with them once a week
Perfect.
cleaning that's going to be in place.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. And we do appreciate your investment
Yes.
in our downtown. Yeah. And so we'll work with you. And Elizabeth,
Okay.
thank you for the role that you have played in brokering this partnership and addressing those issues. Members, is there a motion?
motion for
The mayor moves that we approve the grant. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Matlow. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. That brings us now to
Thank you.
item. Thank you, Mike. And Sheila, thank you for that presentation.
Thank you.
That brings us to item number 9.01, our preliminary fiscal year 2020 CRA budget.
Commissioners,
Director?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, board members. So you will be adopting your final budget for the CRA on September 26th. So this will be your last opportunity to give any input on the budget as we move forward. So Rick's going to give probably needs to give a pretty good thorough overview of this so we all know what we're looking at today, so we get clear direction when we come back on September.
Rick?
Make sure this works here. Yes, it does. Okay, so Commissioners, it's kind of a rehash. A lot of stuff we talked about this back in May. Get some general direction from you guys back then. I will tell you that all the TPDs, the to be determined that were in the budget back in May, have been removed. We have more firm numbers for all those areas now, although there's still a few decisions that need to be made regarding the FY19 budget. We still have a couple of months to go till the end of September, so we'll talk a little bit about the FY19 budget as well as we move through this for both districts. Millage rate's going to the city's going to stay at 4.1. Just a reminder that the county now contributes the same amount the city does in the Frenchtown Southside District. That has an impact on our budget going forward. Short-term reduction, long-term, because of the extension to 2038, we'll receive more tax increment through that extended period of time. We did have originally projected about $4.2 million in tax increment for the Frenchtown Southside District. It's now increased to $2.7 million, almost $2.8 million, based upon the estimated taxable values prepared by the Leon County Property Appraiser. And just recently, we also got the preliminary taxable values, which we haven't had a chance to update into your agenda items. That raises it another, it's only about another $5,000, but it's going in the kind of direction we want it to go in. We get the final tax numbers in October, but obviously when we bring back to you on September 25th, we'll be using the preliminary taxable value numbers. We have added some major projects for Frenchtown and Southside, particularly Frenchtown neighborhood, and some additional money for bond. You'll see that as we go through the agenda items. And I think just one of the things to point out, because we've had this discussion, is that we will be looking at some points where our projected expenses will exceed the annual tax increment revenues and uncommitted funds we commit to projects. And I've outlined those in the agenda item. They're also, you'll see them on your attachments 1 and 2, because they'll be highlighted in red at the very bottom of each one of those pages where there's a proposed shortfall. But we do have the reserves to cover those. That's part of one of the benefits of the reserves, one of the purposes of the reserves is to cover those for projects deemed most critical by the CRA board. This is just a breakdown of the revenues from the CRA. It was the same thing as we showed earlier. It just shows now that we're showing now the preliminary values versus the staff estimates, the estimated taxable values by the property appraiser versus the staff estimates we presented in May. So we have about $8.9 million in projected revenue and income for the CRA, looking at revenues and cash and reserves. One thing to point out in 2020, we expect to use all of our uncommitted funds by the end of 2019 for projects. So we do have a shortfall in 2019, so obviously we'll be using all of our uncommitted funds to cover that shortfall. Operating budget, a few changes in that area there. We now have, we presented to you back in May, we did not have what's called the ISF, the Internal Service Funds from the city yet. We do now have that. That $154,000 in operating administrative costs also includes about $68,000 in ISF funds. Those are the kind of things where the CRA contributes towards the accounting provided by the city, procurement services, ISS, and the like. Every department does it. It's nothing unique to the CRA. It's just now we have a specific number we can apply against that. We have a breakdown of all the CRA expenses in Attachment 4, and then you'll even see the ISF funds listed there by line item. So we have our contractual obligations. We've discussed these in the past. These are ones we have actually either an agreement with or a requirement to maintain. Block and deck, we project the payment to be about $400,000. We won't know until the final taxable values are known. But right now, based upon the preliminary values they provided, that's about $400,000 in payment to district joint venture. Block and deck garage expenses, about $73,000. That's for maintaining the garage, for maintaining the equipment, for leasing the parking kiosks and the like. And then Big Ben Cares is a $375,000 payment. The interesting thing for both the block and the deck and Big Ben Cares is that FY 2021 will be their last payment. I realize it's a year out, but for the block and the deck, we're going to have a $400,000 payment in 2020, but we project the balance of what we owe them would be about $185,000, $184,000 in 2021. That means starting in 2021, we're going to be able to keep more of that tax increment we get from the block and the deck for reinvestment. And this is where we see the value of investing in these large commercial projects, how they really can benefit the CRA in the long term, because they become a cash cow for other parts of the district. We're looking at $400,000. And the thing we've done here is that we've projected that the remaining TIF from the Frenchtown, for the block and the deck for reinvestment in Frenchtown, is going to be about $8.1 million through 2038. So it's a nice investment for the district. Any questions about our required expenses? And then just kind of a breakdown on Table 4 and Attachment 2 in your agenda item, just kind of list the programs. We're going to go through those here shortly. And there are some programs in this. We're going to talk about the 2019 budget that are in this Table 4. And then we also break down in a little more detail the anticipated shortfalls that the CRA will have to address in 2019, 2020, and 2021 within the Frenchtown Southside District. Again, if you look at Attachment 2, the last line item in Attachment 2, you'll see those highlighted in red. So what do we have for proposed capital expenses? Some of these I'm going to say proposed, but they're actually already been approved. Property management, just a short, minor amount of money we put in there in case we have to cut the grass, fix a fence, fix a window, et cetera. You all approved the promotional and special event funding for the Greater Frenchtown Southside District back at the May meeting. As a matter of fact, we've already received the applications for both the Frenchtown Southside and downtown promotional and special events and the downtown large events, and they're being put together by staff right now with the idea that we'll take about for evaluation either later in July or first part of August and bring it back to you with a recommendation on the funding of the large events at the September meeting and tell you where we are with the small event also at the September meeting. $300,000 for our BR5P. It's kind of a standard we put in the budget each year. Affordable housing. We're not recommending any money in this budget year for affordable housing. Again, because we have some shortfalls, we're trying to figure out what do we have a cash on hand that we can use to address some of the more critical needs without putting us further into having to use reserves. So you'll notice there's a number 1 next to that one up, next to the affordable housing funds. And what that just says, we have $500,000 remaining in FY18 money and $1 million in FY19 money. So we're going to go into fiscal year 2020 with about $1.5 million in affordable housing funds. We're working with community housing and community housing human services on some proposed housing projects, as well as some of the things that will be coming out of both the Frenchtown Plan and the Bond Neighborhood Community Plan. Okay. Now, we did put $2 million. If you recall, back in September, the board approved $6.4 million for the Bond Neighborhood First Plan. And in there, was original of $500,000. As part of the FY19 budget, which you've already approved, an additional $150,000 for the linear park, so that shows up in there as $650,000 in the FY19 line item. And then we put in $2 million as part of our 3-year commitment to the Bond Neighborhood Plan to move forward on that. And we don't really have it set for what it's going to be used for yet. It could be streets, it could be streetscapes, it could be sidewalks. It can be what's going to come out of the Bond Neighborhood First Plan, what the neighborhood decides. We've also put in $1 million for the Frenchtown Placemaking Plan with the same idea that the neighborhoods would come together. There's still some issues there, kind of getting the neighborhood to figure out what they want, but it would be a neighborhood decision that we'll use to implement and spend that $1 million. This just continues on, showing some additional expenses. Really, this talks about FY19, some continuing expenses we had in there, and that's what we did an evaluation of the Delta Kappa Omega facility over at the Providence Neighborhood Community Center. We also provided $7,400 for replacing the fence at the Life Recovery Center. That was approved by the board a while back in 18. And then we have the Living Stones, which was presented to the board. These are things that the Life Recovery fence was approved by the CRA board, previous board. The other expenses were approved by the executive director as his authority as a department head. We don't have any of those in the proposed expenses. I will say that we're going to talk about the Delta Kappa Omega coming up here, because there could be some additional expenses in there. And then just kind of highlight some of the other points we had in there about the $150,000 for the linear park and the bond and neighborhood bond and Frenchtown funding. So expenses, we're not quite sure of where we are yet. We do have an application pending from Charles and Chuck's place, a building redevelopment over on South Adams, South Monroe Street. Originally, the board, the CAC approved or recommended approval about a $471,000 grant, but since then the property owner has changed the development, made it much more dense development with residential spaces above it. We have not had their application submitted yet, so it has not gone back to the CAC for consideration. We do expect it to happen at September, but the applicant was still working out some of their financials last time we talked with them. So if it happens in September, it's probably likely to be a 2020 expense as opposed to a 2019 expense. September 25th versus October 1st is not a real delay in time. Frenchtown Redevelopment Partners, you reviewed the presentation today, you made your action today. There's no request in there. There's an offer to purchase the properties from the CRA, but the action we have is to go back and negotiate all the terms and bring back a specific proposal to you. So we don't have anything listed in there right now, although I do expect we will see something in 2020. And again, anything we do in 2020 is going to continue to add to where we're going to have to go back and use some of our reserve funds. And the last thing was the Delta Kappa Omega neighborhood community. So we moved from the evaluation, now we're moving to the repairs. I want to point out, because there's been some confusion, that the land is owned by the city for that facility, but the building itself is owned by the Delta Kappa Omega group. It is not owned by the CRA, and the construction was not done by the CRA, but was done by the Delta Kappa Omega contractor. But we're going to come back and look at some solutions with them. They're going to come to us with some financing, but they've also made a commitment to us that they will have some skin in the game when they come back with that proposal. Again, whether or not that's September, October, I don't know the answer to that question yet. Yes, ma'am.
My question is, I know we put in a placeholder for Delta Kappa Omega, and we didn't put in placeholders for the others, but you're saying that to go back and add them at some point will cause us to go into reserves. Why can't we do some type of estimation and have at least a placeholder of some level of commitment there, so we have that going in and won't have to go back to reserve for the whole thing if it should exceed that amount?
Well, we're going to have to go, for these items, we're going to have to go back into reserves regardless, because we're already used up for 2020. We're already in a situation where we're dipping into reserves. So anything that we add to the budget now is going to go further into reserves for these projects.
I see.
It's just that we don't know. 471, we could put that in for the Charles and Chuck's place and show that, but we do think it'll be larger. And Frenchtown Redevelopment Partners, I really don't know how to come up with a good number for that right now. That will really depend on what we come together as a group for and decide how to move forward.
Okay.
Does that answer your question a bit?
Mr. Mayor?
A-Life Recovery Fence Repair, where are we? Is that already done? Has it been completed yet?
No, they've been working on that. The B&T fencing was going to be doing it. They're under contract with the city. They've just had some delays because of rain and other activities, and they're trying to do a very good job of matching. We're going to use some replacement fencing that the CRA had from the old shelter property, and they're trying to make a very good job to make sure they match the older fencing with the newer fences. It's taking a little bit longer to move forward. Mr. Holmes is aware of where we are with this project.
It's the property, help me, on Georgia Street, where the fence, there is no setback off of the sidewalk whatsoever.
That is correct.
Yeah, I've actually had complaints about that. When we're replacing the fence, and I don't know if we're replacing the front or is it the side?
The front fence.
Well, can we please take into consideration some type of a setback off of the sidewalk so that it's a quality of life beautification issue, even if it's 6 inches or a foot?
We're going to go back maybe about a foot or so. There's a stormwater pond, a swale right back there, so we can only go so back before you're starting to get the slope of the swale. But it's going to be about a foot, maybe as much as 15 inches.
But Rick, we can definitely do it on the front of the property where
that's
the
what we're doing.
stormwater facility is not.
No,
I'm talking about
the swale is on the front of the property. The swale is the front.
The swale is not right on the sidewalk that requires the fence to be basically in the concrete.
We can move the fence back about a foot, maybe 15
That's all
inches
I'm asking.
before it gets into the swale.
That's all I'm asking.
Yep.
If we could do a foot, that'd be great.
We got that covered.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions at this point? Okay, Rick?
So then, this kind of gives a summary review of where we are with our proposed expenses. And you'll see the bottom line is that we have available about $4.2 million in funds available for implementation of the 2020 budget. That $4.2 million is going to be, because you see there is going to be primarily reserves. Again, that's what the reserves are for, to be used on projects the board determines they need to be spent on. And that's what.
And Rick, what is our total in reserves?
As of right now, it's a little low. It's about $4.2 million.
4.2.
And you might remember that's about what we got from the sale of the Firestone and Bloxham property.
Right.
That's where that big balance is coming from. When the Firestone Bloxham property was sold, they were sold because of property that the developer received in Frenchtown. So the money came from the sale of those properties back to the Frenchtown Southside District.
Okay.
So,
Commissioner Bryant?
yes.
Commissioner Bryant?
Is there I'm going to not the greater Frenchtown, but the downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Are we operating within, right now, funds that are available, or are we actually in the same posture, looking at reserves?
In the downtown district?
Yes, sir.
It depends on where we do with some of the future projects. We'll review that. Right now, we'll have a small end-of-year balance. We have a big balance at the end of 19 in the downtown district.
Mm-hmm.
We have about almost a little shy of $2 million, like a couple of $1,000s shy of $2 million. But that money is going to be used for the 50% garage payment we have to make in 2020 for the Cascades joint venture CRA-owned public parking garage. And I talk about that if you give me just a few minutes in the downtown district. That might answer your question.
I think I'm remembering I was told that. That's okay.
So now we'll just move on to the downtown district.
Rick,
Again,
before we move off of that, because I do have issues with us using the reserves and there being anticipated expenses, even more expenses coming out of those reserves. So I would just ask that we be kept informed, about these additional expenses and how much of that is going to be requested from our reserves. Because we all know what reserve funds are for, and we certainly don't want to be in a posture of, setting a precedent of using reserve funds for some of these ongoing expenses.
And how are we going to replenish?
Replenish those reserve funds. Absolutely. Thank you.
Sure. And if you look at attachment for the Frenchtown South Side, if you look at attachment 2 in your package, you will see that in the out years, because we start having the block and the deck and some of these people starting to pay in, we don't owe them any more money, it will build itself back up over a period of time. But you do get back to the question of what kind of long-term commitments is the board prepared to make and how that will affect the replenishment. I mean, that's one of our, and we will absolutely have that conversation with you all. And
Okay.
be fully involved with that.
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Matlow and then Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a similar question. I was wondering, how much have we historically kept in reserves in those accounts?
Actually, up until this point in time, we've never really touched our reserves. We've kept them for a rainy day fund, and we're kind of I don't want to call this a rainy day fund, but this is something the board has determined to be important. When the board made a decision back in December of last year to fund the Greater Bond Neighborhood First Plan over 3 years, we knew we were going to dig into reserves to make that happen, because we didn't have $6.4 million to commit over 3 years and do other things within Frenchtown. So we knew that was the case. We got lucky. We have the $4.2 million from the sale of the Firestone and Bloxham property that came to the Frenchtown Southside District. We probably won't have a sale like that again in a long, long time. But we do have, the extension of the CRA to 2038, which will give us some revenue. And if we have a good stream of revenue, I'm not proposing this as a solution, but the CRA could borrow funds in the future years to kind of make some of those shortfalls. The only thing is, if we borrow funds from a lender, they're typically going to require us to commit the tax increment to pay the debt service. They're not going to trust us to make it up via parking or anything like that. They'll take our parking revenue, but they want to make sure the debt service or the tax increment is the first thing they can come after if they need to.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that help a little bit?
Did you have a follow-up, Commissioner Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my follow-up would be kind of on that point, as we have these $0 or to be determined projects, maybe figuring out what that cap is and having some sort of uncommitted funds or working capital that we expect to spend that year, so we're comparing apples and oranges as we go forward.
Okay. Very good point. Mayor and then Commissioner Bryant.
Yeah, and let me just throw this out, and we can have more of this conversation during a briefing, but it goes back to the reserves. I take a different approach. I mean, how much of our reserve, what would the reserve operating line reflect percentage-wise of the actual operating line? Are we at 40%, 50%, 20%?
Of our typical budget?
Correct.
Well, this year it kind of it's kind of skewed a little bit because we got the $4.2 million, but typically it was, and then what was it, about $2 million, I think, we had in the reserves. The reserves are really in the Frenchtown Southside District are based upon some of the revenue we get for parking, some of the revenue we got for loans, and also it's built up slowly over the 17 years but it was not, what we put in the reserves was our non-TIF funds. So we got non-TIF dollars from whatever project, from whatever thing we were working on. We put that into the reserve account because we didn't want to tie it to the TIF money, which had a 3-year spending and other limitations on it. The money we got back from loan payments, the money we got back from interest payments, the money and similar went into what we put into the reserves because we didn't have those same 3-year restrictions. And quite frankly, we had more flexibility in how to spend the money in general because it wasn't tax increment. It's no longer colored by the tax increment controls.
Okay. So here's the conversation I want to have, because I don't want to take up more of your time, and I'm going to support the proposed budget as well. Okay. I'm not in favor of banking money just to bank money. I know that we need to carry a reserve line that represents about 2 to 3 months or 18% of the operating cost. If we have reserve funds that are representing 40 or 50% of capital costs in operating, that's not in line. We've got great projects that we could be moving forward and funding. I understand the philosophy of the previous commission of maybe saving up some money, so if we have that big project that we can go, that's cool. I'm just saying that we should have a conversation philosophically of the budgeting of CRA and how we're going to move forward. Do we want to continue to bank money, have very high operating percentages that represent actuals, so if we have that big project that comes through, we're ready to go? Or are we ready to move forward with some of the projects that we've been discussing so that we can start moving forward for progress?
That one.
And so these are the kind of conversations that I think today, let's move forward and approve what's before us, but it's a philosophical conversation of how we are going to operate moving forward.
And we can bring some recommendations to you because we do own some critical spaces in the Frenchtown South Side and down. So we own parking spaces. We have to keep some reserves in case there's something within the parking spaces we own. Right. We have to do an emergency repair. So there are some funds in there, but we can certainly address what is a board expectation of a reasonable amount.
Okay. Commissioner Bryant?
Ready to pay.
Commissioner Bryant?
Thank you.
You have the floor.
It's really a question and follow-up regarding reserves. We do have the right to have a reserve, is that right?
Absolutely, correct.
Okay. So given that, I am really in agreement that I really don't want to see us have millions of dollars in reserve and projects sitting waiting for money. That, to me, that's a disconnect.
Agree. Yeah.
The mayor said it before I did, but, you know, I was the first one before you,
Yeah. No, I mean, you initially raised the issue. I mean, I think our conversation was a follow-up to your initial point about the reserves, and I agree. I mean, that's what the CRA is all about, is investing in the community, not banking money and having this large reserve, but a responsible reserve in the event that there are issues that come up that we have to take care of.
And until the recent direction to spend more in the neighborhoods, we were never at a point where we had to dip into reserves to fund what the board approved.
Right.
So it's kind of taken a new dynamic a little bit on here. So I agree. I understand what you all saying.
Providing a new
We'll make sure
direction.
we address it.
Yeah.
We get it, absolutely.
Okay.
So-
Any other questions, comments?
I'll move staff recommendation for you.
Okay.
Mayor,
So
with the
you
mayor
don't need to go to the
appropriate.
downtown district, you're fine?
Second?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you
There's
want
a motion and
I'm
a
sorry,
second.
Do you want one motion per district or just one motion overall?
How did you all want it, Wayne?
We'd like it together.
The overall budget? Okay, let's finish the
Yeah,
presentation.
when you're
and
ready. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Then we'll
Thank
do
you.
one budget,
Sorry.
one motion for both budgets.
Downtown district, again, just a reminder that the county puts in 4.2698 mils, and that'll stop, and the city puts in 4.1. The county contribution will stop, though, in 2024. So we'll see a reduction starting in 2024. A few years away, but just for planning purposes. Again, the increment there, when we presented to you back last time, was about $2.3 million. Now it's closer to $2.5 million, and we may see even go up even a few more dollars. Again, we're talking thousands of dollars now between the Leon County property appraiser estimate and the Leon County property appraiser preliminary. There's not a big difference, and we don't expect to see much changes at this point in time. Again, just our revenues. Again, we're looking at $5.7 million. We will see, so probably the most important for this one, if you look down at prior year project funds, you'll see the 1.9, almost $2 million we talked about for the prior year master funds, and $1.1 million. That's what the reserve is for the downtown district, $1.1 million. So it's about 20% out of our $5 million budget. And then our operating expenses, again, these are you can see these line item by line item on table, or excuse me, attachment 4 in your budget package. Payments we have to make in 2020, pretty simple. We have a gateways, the Tallahassee Gateway, not to be confused with the Frenchtown Gateway. That's the project on the corner of Monroe and Tennessee Street. The Onyx, about $254,000. And then the big one for 2020 is the 50% garage payment we have to make sometime in 2020, probably April or May of 2020. Once that's made, then we'll have another payment of $3.5 million. And I think the big thing for this, though, is once Collegetown we're not making any more payments to Collegetown, they'll generate about $1.3 million in uncommitted funds through the life of the CRA through 2034, and that's with the county not paying after 2024. And then the Onyx will do about $3.4 million, again, without the county paying after 2023. This just kind of highlights what we talked about a little bit earlier. We do have a projected year-end balance of $47,000 and some change for the downtown district, but this will change if additional projects are approved as part of the FY19 budget. That will then obviously go into where we have a shortfall, and we will use reserves for that shortfall. Same, just kind of highlighting this kind of, if you look at the bottom bullet there, just kind of talks about what our shortfalls are projected to be in 2021 and 2023. Again, we start to see a recovery of this starting in the out years, but there will be a shortfall for those 2 years. Non-contractual expenses that we have in our budget for 2020, and these have already been approved by the board, is the large event grant program and the promotional special events grant program totaling $135,000. And we'll be bringing back the details for you on the downtown large event at the September meeting, with making a recommendation of who to fund. Projects that are pending, well, you approved the $50,000 request for ground floor today, so that we've built into our budget the next time we present it to you. And then we have a public patio sidewalk improvement. This is going to be by the Doubletree Hotel. It's about a $15,000 payment. The hotelier will put in another $15,000 to match the CRA funds for the repair. So that results in a shortfall of about $17,000 in our 2020 budget, because that'll roll over from less money at the end of 2019. Is that all right? And again, this is our look at our expenses, a summary of our expenses. And so it says funds available for future programming. Again, that's going to be our reserve funds starting in 2020. We're going to end up committing all of our prior year funds for some of the debt service to go to the garage. Well, not the debt service, to go for the garage initial payment. And then what's remaining for 2020, we have the preliminary tax reviews. We're going to take it to the CAC on August 12th for their comments. It went to the DRC on Tuesday. They didn't have any comments specific to the budget, but they did have some ideas of how they wanted to see some of the money spent in the future in the downtown district. Budget adoption is scheduled for September 26th. And then the big news is we'll get our final tax roll, and that's really when we know what we're going to get in tax increment funds. We'll get the final tax roll by the Leon County property appraiser in late September, early October of 2019. And that's all I have. I think we've got a lot of questions. But
Any questions, board members? There's a motion by the mayor, seconded by board member Matlow. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. All right. I think that is our agenda for the morning, except for
I do believe we have a number of
speakers on unagended items.
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay. Our first speaker, Sheila.
Okay, we do have, it appears, I have 7 speaker cards.
Okay.
And our first speaker I have as Mr. Kayla Norris Barber, followed by Vaughn Wilson, followed by Mrs. Alexis McMillan. Name and address for the record, please, and you will have 3 minutes.
Good morning, board members.
Good morning.
Kayla Norris Barber, 650 West Brevard Street. Board members, we're here this morning to ask for your support for an event that we are calling the Frenchtown Get Down. DIA has discontinued it at their, not the last board meeting, previous board meeting. They discontinued the downtown Get Down. We are proposing to do a similar event in Frenchtown on Fridays prior to FAMU football games. Now, one of the issues for us is that there are 2 FAMU football games that fall within this fiscal year. Let me digress for a minute, because we don't have large event funding for Frenchtown as it is in downtown. We're asking basically for funding for large events in Frenchtown. So our proposal is 6 home games. 2 of them fall within this fiscal year. So we're asking for $52,000 for this fiscal year and $48,000 for 2020. Now, the concept is to provide nationally known entertainment, bring it to Frenchtown, block off Macomb Street from Virginia Street to Georgia Street. Would not negatively impact any of the businesses in Frenchtown. As a matter of fact, there will be tremendous economic impact for those businesses if we bring those activities to Frenchtown. We've put together a dynamic team of folks that we know will make these events successful. And I'm going to just run down the list of the people that are on our team, which 4 of them are here this morning. We have Vaughn Wilson, former sports information director. I think he was the deputy athletic director myself for FAMU. Joe the Almighty Bullock, who's an on-air personality. Charles Hayes, the former CRA director in Gaston County, which would be our Gaston County connection. James DJ Lil Boy Bennett, who's here this morning as well. Miss Sabrina Newby, she's here this morning. She's a resident of Frenchtown, comes out of good bread. She's our, what I call get stuff done person. Then there's Sheila Morris, who's an event planner, who's a tremendous part of our team. Doc D. Baker, Tallahassee Nights Live, and Mr. Jeff Modica, who's here this morning as well. He produces plays nationally. The last play that you may be aware of is Forever First Lady, a play surrounding Michelle Obama, which he's producing, and actually this show is traveling nationally as we speak. So the ask this morning is for $52,000 and to set aside some money for large events for Frenchtown. $52,000 will cover the first 2 events on Friday before the FAMU games that fall within the current
If you
fiscal
could
year.
start to wrap up your comment.
Okay. All right. Well, I think I basically laid the framework.
Okay.
And there will be speakers behind me who will maybe add clarity. If you have questions, I must be around to entertain any questions that you may have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ken. Who's our next speaker, Sheila?
Vaughn Wilson, followed by Mrs. Alexa McMillan, followed by Don Tolliver.
Good morning to you all.
Good morning. We're glad to have you here this morning.
It's a pleasure. I don't make it a habit of being here. I enjoy what you do. I support you all, but I like to support from afar. I watch you on COT sometimes.
And this young man has a wife whose last name just happens to be Richardson. That's all I'm saying.
Yes.
No
Yes,
relation.
I'm here today in support of what Mr. Barber is proposing. We grilled him in a meeting a few days ago, which was the only reason I was able to commit to being here. And I really like that he was open to suggestions from professionals of how to streamline what he was trying to do into something that could be good. Growing up in Tallahassee, I remember Frenchtown as a vibrant area. Frenchtown has changed. Frenchtown had to change in a lot of ways, and it has changed, I think, for the better. I also think that, as a kid growing up watching that FAMU parade coming through Frenchtown, going down with my daddy to get a barbecue sandwich after work, my uncle come in town and he would go to the pool hall in Frenchtown. So Frenchtown has a lot of different meanings for a lot of different people, and a lot of it's festive. And so this proposal by Mr. Barber struck a chord with me because it brings the festive activity. FAMU, for security reasons, has moved the parade back on campus. So a lot of people don't visit Frenchtown as much as they used to. I think the possibility of this bringing the festivities back to Frenchtown would be something beneficial. I think it's not controversial when people can get together and have some good, clean fun. It would bring some extra bed nights here in Tallahassee. If part of the thing that we commanded of Mr. Barber is we've got to reach our opponents that FAMU is playing. And actually, even one of the opponents that Florida State's playing on the same time as FAMU's playing, Alabama State, would be attracted to this event. So the attraction of the event, I think, is there. The meaning of that event to Frenchtown for us promoting something festive in that area, which was traditionally a festive area, would be really good. So it kind of goes along with what you all are talking about earlier, which was very interesting. But we have a Frenchtown resident on the panel, which was very good to listen to her and to listen to the people in the area to what they want, because we're making a lot of decisions, but you don't want to make decisions for people without hearing from them. So I think we are doing that. I think we have a good core group of people. We're going to need a bigger meeting space because Mr. Barber brought everybody. But I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing. We ironed out a lot of issues on our meeting. So I ask that I throw my support behind it and wish that the committee would support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vaughn. Our next speaker?
Vaughn Wilson, 4317 Calcutta Court.
All right. Thank you, Vaughn. Our next speaker, Sheila?
Our next speaker is Ms. Alexis McMillan, followed by Don Tolliver, followed by Ms. Sabrina Thurman Newby.
Hello again, Alexis.
Hello again, Alexis McMillan, 319 North Macomb Street, Economy Drugstore. Would definitely be in favor of Get Down. We do think
Getting
that
down, Alexis.
Get Down would be something that the community would, all of the community would be able to have something to do during football season. We look forward to that. We're saddened by the fact that the FAMU football season no longer has the parade for homecoming, but this is something that will definitely be an activity that we support. We hope that you all will support it as well, and we look forward to it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alexis. Next speaker.
Mr. Don Tolliver, followed by Ms. Sabrina Thurman Newby, followed by Mr. James Bennett.
Okay,
Name
good
and
morning,
address for the
Reverend.
record, please.
Good morning.
Thanks for hanging in there with us.
Hey,
this morning.
no problem. We're going to do what we can to make it work.
All right.
Don Tolliver, 302 Bermuda Road, Chairman, Mayor, Commissioners, Brother Tatter. I'm here in support of the event as well. Mount Olive Housing Community Development Corporation has been around for quite a while and has done some great things in the Frenchtown community as well. Looking at this venture as a whole, with me working with the Frenchtown Revitalization Committee and working with merging all the plans that they have and trying to assist working with the Urban League and all the other organizations. They had 10 plans, and we're trying to condense it down into one. I feel as though this would be a good, positive event to bring back some more resolution back to the Frenchtown area. In that's being positive enforcement. This will be another event that will be positive for the community. It will be another event that brings economic growth back to the community. Frenchtown, when I moved to Tallahassee in 1976, was up and running and doing quite a few things. There were quite a few businesses, and a lot of them have gone away. To bring events back to Frenchtown and the surrounding community would actually bring back the integrity of the group, bring back the integrity of Frenchtown, and as well bring back the integrity of the businesses that are currently still working and vibrant, working in the Frenchtown area. My last comment is pretty simple. The Frenchtown organizations and businesses that are still working and still trying to make a difference, they're still there for a reason, because they believe in Frenchtown, they believe in Tallahassee and the surrounding areas, and they believe in the community. I believe in the community as well. I heard a few minutes ago, going back, sidebar, to item agenda 7.01, when they were speaking in reference to the Frenchtown redevelopment partners. I don't agree with Mr. Williams. I feel like if you are in the community, you need to be a part of the community. If you're a part of the community, you know what the community is talking about. And being a part of the community, I can tell you exactly what they're saying. We need this event as well as that other one. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Reverend. Next speaker.
Next speaker, Ms. Sabrina Thurman Newby, followed by Mr. James Bennett, followed by Mr. Jim Bellamy, who will be our last speaker. Name and address for the record, Ms. Thurman Newby. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sabrina Thurman Newby. My address is 2611 Houghton Street, but I am a lifetime member of Frenchtown. I remember Frenchtown in its heyday when we had shops and businesses along these main corridors that are now growing empty. I am also familiar with Frenchtown in its decline at the late 80s and through the 90s and 2000s. I'm also a part of the revitalization in FAMU Homecoming Parade 2002. The only thing the Tallahassee Democrat wrote about that year was the Senior Care Services Program and the Silver Foxes of Frenchtown. They were featured in the parade. They were recognized. There was a full article about them. And what's important about that and why I bring it up is because everybody thought those people were dead. We brought them back out. We celebrated them. They were recognized. They had a signature salute that they did at the parade, which is to cross the arms and tap the fingers. That means Frenchtown for life. So I stand here before you as a founder for that program, and I give you Frenchtown for life. We need this get down. We need the commerce. We need the recognition. We are very tired of being overlooked. We have not been heard. We need to bring the people out in a celebration just for them, so that when you see us, you see us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mr. James Bennett, name and address for the record, followed by Mr. Jim Bellamy, who will be our last speaker.
All right. My name is James Bennett, 600 North MLK Jr. Boulevard on the corner of Georgia Street. So I live in this neighborhood. I'm also a Tallahassee business owner. I own 3 businesses, United Trophies and Awards on the venue. You know, you got a couple of trophies. Good to see you, man. Good to see you. And so, you know, side note, Mr. Mayor, you see where I come from. So when you say where did this business come from, it comes from this family. So along with up here on this panel. Also, I work for Blazing 102.3 Cumulus Broadcast, so I'm a radio personality. Along with, I'm a member of Bethel Baptist. And I went to Steele Collins. So that whole block that you guys are looking at, that's my whole life. Along with the one part that I did see that was gray, that's my grandparents' land, right there, the Landers. So like you say, and I am third generation, and I'm about to be in these meetings talking on my land too. So saying that to say, I have a lot of soul ties into the community. As I was walking my puppy, I actually seen Mr. Barber. He told me to come to this meeting. To come on board because a lot of you guys been asking me to speak to the youth. Every time it's all about the youth and to come out and help the youth. And I feel like situations like this and events like this would help us with the medium between the youth. And also, it will bring back unity in the community. We don't have to unify when it's time to do a walking down the road rally. We can do it in the beginning of the seasons. Also with FAMU, I also DJ for Florida State, so I DJ in the stadium and I do the tailgate. So on the other side, I do that, but I kind of want to do the same thing for my side, which I grew up with, which is the orange and green. Alongside that, I feel that with the businesses, my whole life, all I've known is the parades in Frenchtown. So that's, you know, outside of an event, that's culture. You know, to a lot of people that's new to Tallahassee, you know, FAMU is more like a family. You know, this time that you see your parents, your grandparents, your cousins, and everybody come home. So this will give another reason that people will come back to Tallahassee. Another point I want to hit on is a tourist site. Actually, you know, Frenchtown is a tourist attraction. A lot of people didn't know in the 70s, between 70 to 75, Ray Charles used to come down here and perform in Frenchtown every other weekend. Stayed on the same street. Say that again?
Red Bird Cafe?
Yeah, I didn't know that. My grandma and everybody told me I had to Google it. I'm the Google situation. So saying that to say about bringing bigger names, it's nothing new. It's something we always did, but we let it get away from us. You know? So saying that to say from learning from my grandparents, learning from my mom, learning from Reverend Holmes, which is a big guy in this whole situation, you know, I want to carry on the legacy. My grandma passed 3 years ago, and she was the owner of that lot, and now my granddaddy is taking over it, which is in Frenchtown. But my whole purpose of doing what I do, from music to opening up local businesses, is to carry her legacy and the legacy that I learned from Reverend Holmes and my fellow Bethelites, as I would like to say. So, like you say, I think this is an awesome idea. We do have the radio station behind it, as you heard from 96.1, which is Joe Bullitt. I'm the younger generation, which is Blazing 102.3. We got Star 98. We got the whole Cumulus broadcast.
Mr. Bennett, if you'll start.
Yeah,
All right. Oh, sorry. So saying that to say, we have the whole family behind us. So thank y'all for giving us that chance.
All right. Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you. Our last and final speaker, Mr. Jim Bellamy. Name and address for the record.
And as Mr. Bellamy comes, if I could take a point of personal privilege,
yes.
I taught that young man in Sunday school who just spoke there, and very proud of him. Sunday school
teacher. Okay. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good.
Jim Bellamy, 532 West Georgia Street and 524 MLK Boulevard. I'm here because, you know, we kind of miss FAMU being in the neighborhood. I live on Georgia Street. The band used to line up there, and the parade used to line up there every year. People in the neighborhood, I kind of got upset about it when they decided to change it, because I felt like the people in that neighborhood had really dedicated themselves and supported them for all those years, and then they moved. And at first, some people don't know the history of it, but the first time they tried to move, we stopped it. Because Colonel Joe came over and talked to us, and we said, no, can't move now. But see, people be coming in there, and people still come to Tallahassee, wanting to know where the parade is and stuff. I have a lot of people that come in town. I have cousins come in from Atlanta. I have cousins come in from D.C. and all those places, and they still miss the parade. And I'm glad that we see that we're trying to put an event in there that really would kind of put us back in that category again. And we definitely support it. I have really enjoyed listening to y'all this morning because there are a lot of things that I didn't know that I found out about. But anyway, that's not very often either. But anyway, I just want to say we're coming together in Frenchtown. We're getting to work with everybody, and we welcome the new group, the Frenchtown Coalition for the Arts. We've already had a conversation with them, and we support the kind of thing that they do, and they fit right into where we need to go. So I'm really excited about that, and we're asking that you support the down Frenchtown Get Out.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, that's our last speaker.
Yes,
Sheila?
sir.
Okay, any comments,
Mr. Chair?
questions, suggestions by the board? Commissioner Matlow?
Yeah, I'll just kick it off. I just love the idea of a Frenchtown Get Down. You know, I think, we have an opportunity to, bring people together, but also take a little bit of risk and try a new idea and try something new and let the community know that we support them and we want to give them a shot. And I also think it provides a unique opportunity for the CRA. We've had some dysfunction, to say the least, at some CAC meetings, and different factions of people want different things. And here would be a large event with thousands of people that we could go out as a CRA with presentations of the different ideas and let people weigh in an atmosphere that's fun and festive, and we can take feedback from, I think, a broader spectrum of the community at the same time. So I'd be supportive of getting this event through its first year, and then in the future after that, setting up some sort of process to apply for large event fundings in the area.
Okay. Commissioner Williams-Cox?
I want to make sure, Commissioner Bryant, were you?
I'm after you.
Were you in the queue? Okay. I too, I'm just thrilled. I'm sitting on the edge of my seat regarding the downtown the Frenchtown Get Down. You kind of got to get it out of your head. And I think that this is an opportunity to bring unity. And as Kayla Norris-Barber, in the emails that he sent to us, said that Frenchtown needs a win. I agree, Frenchtown needs a win. They've been very patient. They've been probably more patient than I would have been. So I think it's time that we do something. But I want to say this. All hope is not lost about the parade in Frenchtown. I am working as the liaison with Florida A&M. I'm working to get a meeting with the president to have this discussion. We've had a brief passing discussion, but we need to talk more about this. And if not this year, we maybe need to look at another year. Even with the Get Down, the parade could still happen for homecoming. I keep telling folks, working with the Tourist Development Council, who's working with us as well, FAMU homecoming is not a weekend. It is an experience. People come from everywhere to be a part of this. And as a proud alumni, I know this because I used to bring my children to Frenchtown for the parade. And the children that I used to bring, they're now grown. So it has been a tradition that I hope that we will be able to get back to. So all hope is not lost. We need to reconnect Frenchtown and FAMU to see if we can put that marriage back together. So I'm hoping that we will move forward. I am in support of the Frenchtown Get Down, plan to participate, and hope that we can find the funding in this year to do the games for this year so we'll be ready for the kickoff event. So I want to support it.
Okay. Any other?
Yes.
Commissioner Bryant?
Yes, I'd like to know how can we, and staff probably has to answer this, where would funding come from to support this initiative? I like the idea, but I really want to talk about the money.
Reserves.
Staff, would you respond?
That's exactly correct. The money, I was just doing some numbers here, so the funds will come from reserves.
So the funds are available, that we can do that out of the reserve?
Into the reserves, yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, this is an incredible idea. This is the wrong funding source. I'm sorry, and this is the first time I have really disagreed with my good friends. This is not the new mission of the CRA. This is not the direction of the Frenchtown Southside CRA. If I have additional $100,000, I want to sink it into infrastructure. I want lighting. I want sidewalks. I want affordable housing, which we don't have a penny in our budget for, but we're going to do a get down. I think we should have the get down. Let me be very clear. And I will work with you to make this happen. This is just not the funding source. If you want to take the Downtown Improvement Authority model and recreate it in Frenchtown, there is significant private fundraising that complemented that as well. Where is the budget? Who's pulling the permits? Who's the fiscal agent? If we decide today, and this is the last CRA meeting before football season, all right, who are we even cutting a check to?
Mount Olive.
Who, let me finish my thoughts and the chair can make his decision, but I am very hesitant on two fronts. Number one, I am hesitant because I want to be clear about what the plan is. And I think that there are other ways to make this happen. The CRA is not the appropriate funding source. That's why we do not have a special events category. There is nothing to say a large events category. And Mr. Barber, I read your email. The events that you put in the email come from the downtown CRA, not the Frenchtown Southside CRA. And to me, there is a difference. We're talking about neighborhoods. We're talking about investing. We did an incredible project earlier today about redevelopment. I want to see the downtown get down and the Frenchtown get down happen. This just isn't the appropriate. It's not that I'm against the idea. This is not the appropriate funding source. And I'm sorry. That's my position.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? I guess I have some of the same questions. I want to know who the fiscal agent is, where would the money be going? And Kenny, I'm not asking you to answer those questions today because I don't want to get into this. That's for you to provide to staff, that they will provide that information to us. I would commit to wanting to do this for the fall and see the success of it before we commit to doing anything beyond that. But I mean, the downtown get-downs were a long time in the making. This is not something that you just throw together overnight, and we're, 2 months out from football season right now? And I just don't see how it's going to happen that quickly. But I would certainly be supportive of the fall football games and seeing how that all plays out. But I have to agree with the mayor. I think there are many more needs in the Frenchtown area. And I understand that there's a meeting coming up where everybody's going to try to get together to determine what the needs of the area are. And I would want those individuals to have a say in how this money is going to be spent as well in the Frenchtown. And if they feel that this is a priority event for Frenchtown, we've had these groups working now, our placemaking, some of the other groups that have been working in the Frenchtown community, they've been coming up with plans for Frenchtown for a number of years now, and they will be coming to us with an ask. And so I think for us just to commit funds for an event like this that we don't know a whole lot about, has no track record of success at this point, I would just be very reluctant to commit anything beyond, say, a couple of games in the fall. before we hear from what the long-term plan is for the Frenchtown area from all of those groups that will be coming together, I know, later this month to start hammering something out. Commissioner Bryant and then Commissioner Williams-Cox.
This is to staff. Is the scope of this project outside of the guidelines for a CRA funding? I'm asking.
So Sherry's probably the most familiar with the guidelines for the downtown, but there was a conscious decision by the board several years back about funding large events for the downtown versus Frenchtown based on the population that you would bring to the community or to the city. And now, Sherry, if I said anything not correct, please correct me.
That's correct, Wayne. Basically for the downtown, because we're looking at tourist attractions, we're looking at heads and beds, and looking at matching dollars for the event. So that's why we concentrated on the downtown for large events rather than Frenchtown. And then we also looked at the venue because there are not really big venues in the Frenchtown Southside District as opposed to the downtown as well.
So, and this is probably futuristic, but there could be a reconsideration of what's considered a big event. Is that correct?
Yes, you can set the policy.
Okay. Because big events in reality are really aligned with, like the Get Down is a big event if we use the street, because I no longer need a structure. But beyond that, I support the Get Down, but I also support policy. I do not want to move outside the realm of what we said. That's why I asked the question we are to use CRA funds for, because long-term, that will not yield a positive result. However, there has to be, and obviously this is something we'd have to ask the manager, who is not in here right now, but I'm willing to follow up on, and I hope we all would be, on other funding sources, because the idea is a great idea. And if this is not the source, there has to be one in Tallahassee. I mean, with the funds that are available, we should seek the appropriate landing place and make the recommendation, because I think it is a good event. And I understand the whole this year and see how it goes and then reallocate for the rest of the football season. It's almost like this piloting that we do with other things. But you have to get started somewhere. So I think we should try and figure out if it doesn't fit the rules for CRA, then there has to be a spot where we can make where it fits. Those are just my comments.
Commissioner Williams-Cox and Commissioner Matlow.
I hope to wander somewhere praying, because I'm about to say something. One of the things that we need to consider is one of our priorities at the city is the quality of life and the impact on poverty. What we have watched happen in Frenchtown for the past almost 20 years of the Frenchtown Southside CRA is we've watched the ships come and go in other places, and the ships pass Frenchtown. So what I'm saying is, it's good. Well, you're right. We need housing. We need structures. We need this. But we also need to have people who are proud of our city, people who can come in together and have a good time and might decide to open a business in our city, people who are going to come and stay in hotel beds. Because right now, I know for a fact, because I've been told, for FAMU games, people are taking buses in and they're leaving because there's nothing for them to do in Tallahassee. And what we're doing is we're allowing opportunities to occur in other places. We need to allow some opportunity to occur here. If we have a means of securing dollars, you've heard the Cumulus family is supporting this, other community members, all of those are opportunity costs that could be matching costs for any funding that we provided. I heard what Sherry said about how it was decided for the downtown events, and it wasn't for Frenchtown. And I understand, but we've collected this money for Frenchtown, Southside CRA, and we have not rushed to use it for the betterment of this CRA. At some point in time, we got to do more than brick and mortar. We've got to make people whole. We've got to make people feel good about where they live, feel good about themselves, and feel good about our city. Now, I know our staff can do anything. They've proven it time and time again. I believe that this group, I've seen the individuals who have come before us, and I know there are many others. I know some of them personally. They're professionals. They have academic degrees, more than many. They are quite capable of coming together and working with staff to give us the details that we need. If we don't start now, you're basically saying no to the rest of the season, because you're right. Football season starts at the end of August. And so we need time to get this going. But you can't do it without some commitment of funding. And to say we want to do a pilot, see how it goes, and yada, 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 that's not how others are doing it. In the Tourist Development Council, Doak by night, or Doak at dark, or whatever, they did that twice. And they had funding for that. And I don't, it happened before me, but I'm saying we've got to show, the Tourist Development Council may not have this money. They came to us to ask. The Tourist Development may or may not have it. But if they do, it is a tourism issue. Frenchtown is a tourist spot. Okay? People can put heads in beds. Some of them do. There are things that may not have been considered in the past, but this is a new direction. It's a new time. And we need to be serious and intentional about the message that we send, that it was good for others in the past. And I know that there may have been some other things that went into it, but they didn't start out knowing everything, because the Downtown Get Down began with the United Way raising money for United Way. Right. And that somebody else took over. But they had already done all the legwork and basically handed it over. Okay, so now the Downtown Get Down has done the legwork, and they show you that it works, because many of us were down there with them. So now we're saying, let's just move it a few blocks over and do it here. I think that we have a model that can be used. I think that we just talked about not having money in reserve just to be having money in reserve. Why not let's just step out and do something bold, do something big, and let's see what happens. If it doesn't work this season, then we don't have to do it next season. Let's just see how it works. You can't figure out a trend with 1 or 2 games. You need at least 3 to do a trend analysis. So we need to do this season and see how it goes. And if it doesn't go like we think it needs to go, I'll get out there and help do some fundraising to make it happen. But right now, we don't have time to go door to door begging for money when there's a pot of money that we could possibly use. Our staff working with these individuals can make that happen. I know they can. I've seen them work miracles.
Mr. Matlow?
Amen. But so to some of Commissioner Bryan's points, the downtown CRA hosts several large events and funds at Cascades Park, so it's not outside of the norm for how this CRA has been operating to fund large events. I think we even have the framework of what an application and what we would require them to show that was purchased, and how the funds already in place, and we could just move that over to the Frenchtown and hold them to the same accountability that we hold our downtown large events. But I just want to reject this assumption that large events can only happen downtown and we can't attract the same size crowd to Frenchtown, because I think you can close off a road, you can get a mobile stage, you can attract top talent. And I think in the proposal I saw, there was a significant amount of that proposal dedicated to just paying the talent. And being in a business that provides live music myself, I know what they're proposing is enough to attract somebody who's going to bring thousands of people to that area. So I have no doubt that they'd be able to put together a successful event in the short time frame, and I'm willing to give them that chance. And the point was brought up that there's other funding sources. Absolutely, I'm not saying we should fund this in perpetuity, but I also want to point out, as we in the downtown and the Frenchtown CRA, we shouldn't get into the habit of funding anything in perpetuity. In the downtown CRA, we fund Springtime Tallahassee, and that's an event that's been around longer than Stanley's been coming to city commission meetings. So I guess my point is, I don't want to get into a situation where we're funding Frenchtown Get Towns every year, but we need to give them a springboard to get it started, show that it's successful so they can go out, have a proof of concept, attract those private enterprises, because that's what the CRA is about. We're trying to prove that private dollars can be attracted to Frenchtown, and I think this is the way to do it. So I would make a motion that we authorize staff to negotiate with Mount Olive to host Frenchtown Get Down this year with a limit of $52,000 and use the same framework we use for the downtown large event requirements.
I second that motion, but I'd like to make an amendment to it, if this is in order. For this year, meaning this fiscal year, maybe it's clarification, this fiscal year 2019 and the 2020 as has been proposed, is that your intention?
So I've seen, I think the request was for $52,000 from fiscal year 2019.
Okay.
And then for the further parts of the games would require fiscal year 2020 money. If you want to commit to the entire thing, but I think we have time between now and September to up the ante on the second half.
Okay, I second your motion then.
Mr. Mayor, and then Commissioner Bryant.
This has been an incredible discussion. I think it could be an incredible event. I am standing by my word that this is not the appropriate funding source. I will not be respectfully voting in favor of the motion.
Mr. Chairman, just from a staff perspective, if we follow the downtown framework, there is a dollar-for-dollar match for that framework.
Correct.
And it's reimbursement.
Proof of insurance.
But if
So if those are issues or impediments, we need to have that clear.
Yeah, let me clarify, maybe not the framework, but the documentation of how the money's spent.
Okay.
And if I could come behind him with that, even if there was a dollar-to-dollar match, if you look at what Cumulus is going to bring to the table in opportunity costs, that could be a dollar-to-dollar match. It doesn't have to be money. It could be services.
But Commissioner, it's not in writing. It's not a proposal. We're doing this backwards. First of all, from a philosophical standpoint, again, this is not the appropriate funding source. But from a good public policy perspective, a formal proposal needs to be brought to staff.
Yes.
Fully vetted, placed on an agenda for consideration. This is not the type of things that we just do on a fly.
With all due respect, we bought the Northwood Mall on the fly. We gave staff the ability to negotiate that contract.
We're losing control. We're losing control. If you want to speak, be recognized to speak. Commissioner Bryant.
Thank you. I'm going back to staff because I'm getting two different, I'm feeling like I'm getting two different interpretations. Can we spend, I'm going to say this again, can we spend CRA dollars on this project? Is that within the scope of what these funds can be spent for? I just need yes or no.
Yes, ma'am.
It can be spent for this activity?
Yes, they can be spent for an event.
For this activity?
Yes, ma'am.
Call the question.
I guess, the concern that I have is that this has just come to us. Staff has not had an opportunity to review the proposal, to vet it. I don't know what Mount Olive is, or its I don't. Kenny, I don't know what Mount Olive is. And so I have a problem with turning over taxpayers' dollars to an organization that we're not sure of who it is, who runs it, what its financial strength is. I I just have a problem with it. And those are the issues, not the concept itself, but those are the issues that I just have a problem approving this today. And we just got your email a couple of days ago. Staff hasn't seen the proposal to vet it and bring it back to us with a recommendation. So that's what I have a problem with, is this process. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Commissioner Matlow called a question.
All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign?
Aye.
I didn't get what was your vote, Commissioner Brown? For it or?
Against.
Okay. So the motion fails 3-2.
Now, I have a follow-up.
Okay. Are there any other, Commissioner Bryant?
Yes, I do have a follow-up request. And the request is that, because I don't want the event to die, but I don't necessarily believe this is the place, but I think there is money in the city of Tallahassee. And I would like for this project to be presented to the city manager for options for funding for this year. So I need that to be in the record, that we will follow up as soon as possible, as in like tomorrow. And I would like for Mr. Barber to actually send it. I don't know if it's been sent to the city manager, has it? Send it to the city manager for consideration from some budget.
Okay. Commissioner Williams-Cox?
Mount Olive, just for the record, I've seen it is an organization in good standing who've built affordable housing in Frenchtown. They built nice homes. You may not recognize them, but because they look like what everybody else would build, they've done their due diligence. I just know that we just went through our budget workshop yesterday, and Commissioner Bryant, I think we're going to be hard pressed to go back to the city and ask that we look at the 2019 budget and find $52,000. I just think that we by the vote that we just took, we've missed a great opportunity. We've sent the wrong message, and I don't know how to fix this other than to say to the group that I would hope that we will go to the community to try to find these dollars and make this happen. Because, one of the things that me and my husband do every morning, we watch Leave It to Beaver. And this morning, Beaver's dad said to him, you don't have to prove yourself to improve yourself. So we need to just go find these dollars. We need to go to FAMU and some other places to prove this concept and show them what we're working with.
Are there any other questions, comments? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move.
We are adjourned.
We're not going to talk about that.